Straight white men in this country, they never listen and they never learn. White colonizers, when they came to the United States, were befriended by indigenous. And how did they repay them? They ravaged them with disease, they slaughtered, raped, and pillaged them, and then took their land. You never listen and you never learn. When you trafficked Africans to America so that you could make them your slaves, you would be their owner for 265 years. You didn't listen and you didn't learn. When you didn't see women as equals, and we didn't gain the right to vote until 1920, you didn't listen and you didn't learn. Martin Luther said he had a dream. You didn't listen and you didn't learn. When the Stonewall riots in New York happened in 1969, you didn't listen and you didn't learn. When Reagan talked about trickle-down economics and it never worked, you didn't listen and you didn't learn. When you exploited Hispanic people who walked across an imaginary line, and that was their only crime, to try to have a better life, and you exploited that labor and still do to this day. And now you're disappearing people. You didn't listen and you didn't learn. When COVID, a global pandemic, hit the United States, we had more cases and more deaths than anyone in the world. You didn't listen and you didn't learn. When Joe Biden rightfully won the 2020 election and you couldn't stand that, you rioted. You formed an insurrection because you listened to a man who lost and he made you his bitch. You didn't learn and you didn't listen. When Elon paid Trump $250 million for the election that we all know was this time rigged, you didn't listen and you didn't learn. This big, beautiful bill is going to strip 17 million people from their health care, and a lot of them are going to be you MAGA base. You didn't listen and you didn't learn. When you have fake ICE agents out there disappearing people and covering their fucking faces with pathetic masks because they don't want to be identified because they know that they are not ICE agents. You didn't listen and you didn't learn. 3 million children in the United States are about to get cut off from SNAP. And you didn't listen and you didn't learn. When they told you the big beautiful bill was 1,000 pages, representatives didn't read it and they didn't listen and they didn't learn. White men in this country have never suffered. Never. And now the ultra wealthy are going to strip the lowest incomes so that they can buy a new yacht. But you didn't listen and you didn't learn. Only when it affects you do you listen and do you learn. When you just made a concentration camp in Florida, Auschwitz, Alcatraz, where people are going to be eaten alive by mosquitoes and snakes and alligators, and you were okay with that. You didn't listen and you didn't learn. In order to maintain power and control, you are willing to let the rest of the country suffer because you do not listen and you do not learn. When your sons go to war, a fucking fruitless war that Trump will drum up, you might listen, you might learn. When your mother gets kicked out of a nursing home, you might listen, you might learn. When you have no labor force because you've kidnapped them, you might listen and you might learn. When you lose your job because of dumb fucking tariffs, because nobody who fucking listens to Trump understands what the hell they are, you might listen, you might learn. When the dollar is weakened and gas prices soar and you can't afford anything and you become homeless, maybe you'll listen, maybe you'll learn. When you talk about able-bodied, but you never talk about able-minded people, and you strip medication from them, and they harm you, you might listen, you might learn. When you become Putin's little bitch, you might listen, and you might learn. Anybody who is black or brown or female or LGBTQIA or indigenous or Asian because they don't look like you. You never listen and you never learn. When you claim to be Christian, but do everything against Christ's teaching, and you go to hell, maybe you'll listen. Maybe you'll learn then. Our country is on the verge of collapse because of weak, entitled, privileged men. There are more of us than there are of you. And you need to get that through your thick fucking skulls right now. When and if you celebrate the 4th of July tomorrow, it might be the last one we ever have. But there is no reason to fucking celebrate because this country has turned into a shithole. A racist, bigoted, sexist, fucking classist, ableist, bullshit society. I am a 9th generation citizen, and I'm so fucking embarrassed of this country. A country that my great grandparents fought for. When your constituents die and they can never vote for you again, maybe you'll listen. Maybe you'll learn. When it is you MAGA who suffer, do not come crying. Do not come begging. Because you have literally drained all the empathy and all the sympathy out of us. And now we're not going to listen. And we're not going to learn. Because it is you who needs to do so. All because you dumb fucks would not vote for a black woman. The first VP black woman ever. And instead, you put this orange fuck back into power. But you fail to realize he's gone. And he's a puppet. He is a mouthpiece for every fucking author in Project 2025. Everything they are doing is in that manual that I have read to you. You read the bill on the floor. And you still didn't listen. And you didn't learn. Lisa Murkowski, when people migrate to fucking Alaska to strip your resources, you might listen and you might learn. I hope every backdoor deal was worth it. I hope every lobbyist was worth it. Billionaires are billionaires because we make them that way. And they would do right to remember that because they will never listen and they will never learn. Someday you might care and you might listen and you might learn, but I seriously fucking doubt it.